Clashes between Christians and Muslims in the Nigerian city of Jos claim hundreds of lives. 3 people die in a suicide bomb attack in the Turkish city of Istanbul. Mystery surrounds the fate of the Afghan opposition leader Ahmed Shah Massoud. And Germany's defense minister denies claims he used military jets as taxis. This is BBC News. I'm Deborah Mackenzie. More than 160 people are now known to have been killed during several days of clashes between Muslims and Christians in central Nigeria. Thousands in the city of Jos have sought refuge with police as medical services battle to cope with the numbers of dead and wounded. The clashes are the first in Jos since the sectarian violence of the past few years spread across Nigeria as a number of northern states moved to introduce full Islamic law into their penal codes.
Kaduna 2000, Nigeria's northern city, a cultural melting pot, rocked by clashes between Christians and Muslims.
This is the last day of talks between the African heads of state and President Mugabe and the Zimbabwean capital Harare. What they will have to do is work out the concrete steps that would have to be taken if the Abuja deal is to be implemented on the ground. Without that, there can be no real breakthrough on the Zimbabwean crisis. Raghi Omar, BBC News, South Africa.
A suicide bombing in a crowded Istanbul shopping district has left at least 3 dead, 2 policemen and the bomber who was carrying the explosives. At least 20 other people, mostly police officers, were injured. It happened near Taksim Square, popular with shoppers and tourists.
There was chaos in the aftermath of the bomb blast. Istanbul's governor called it a direct attack on the state. Now a possible motive has emerged. The semi-official Anatolian news agency said the bomber has been identified as a former prisoner named Ur Bulbul. He walked up to a group of policemen on this busy Istanbul street before detonating explosives attached to his body. 2 policemen were killed instantly. Others were badly wounded. Civilians passing by were also hurt. The news agency, which had earlier identified the bomber as a woman, gave no source for its report. But it said Bulbul had been released from prison 6 months ago after serving time for membership of an illegal left-wing group, the Revolutionary People's Liberation Party Front, or DHKPC. It's one of the main organisers of a marathon hunger strike, in which prisoners and their supporters are protesting against conditions in Turkish jails. This could have been the action which prompted the bomber to blow himself up. Last December, 30 left-wing inmates, many of them members of the DHKPC, were killed when the Turkish security forces stormed prisons across the country. They enforced the transfer of hundreds of inmates from large dormitory wards to new prisons where they're held in small cells. Since then, another 33 people have starved to death as the protest has dragged on, and the DHKPC has been promising to take revenge. Chris Morris, BBC News, Istanbul.
There's continuing confusion over the condition of the main Afghan opposition commander, Ahmed Shah Massoud, who was attacked and injured on Sunday. Reports from Washington are quoting an unnamed American official as saying he believed Commander Massoud had not survived the assassination attempt. Other sources say he's still alive and in hospital in neighbouring Tajikistan. He was injured when 2 men posing as journalists detonated an explosive device hidden inside a video camera.
Ahmed Shah Massoud is a devout Muslim and a fierce guerrilla commander trying to stop the Taliban capturing all Afghanistan. Reports say the veteran fighter was tricked by a bogus TV crew. A bomb, possibly inside their camera, left Massoud badly wounded. He's alive, say his supporters. The Americans hope that's true, but aren't certain.
There are conflicting reports about his condition. There are claims that he's been killed. We are not able to confirm any of them at this point, but I am able to say that we're sorry to see this attempt on the life of a key factional leader in Afghanistan.
That's understatement. Washington suspect their most dangerous enemy, Osama bin Laden, could be the man behind this attack. The death of Massoud strengthened the Taliban against all Muslims less hostile to the West.
There's no successor to Ahmed Shah Massoud in the opposition to the Taliban in Afghanistan. All the others have pocketed the money or gone over to the Taliban or disappeared. So there'd be an enormous loss, and it would make the Taliban much more able to control the whole country and continue to defy the rest of the world, including the rest of the Muslim world.
So the future of armed resistance to the Taliban now hangs in the balance. Without Massoud as commander, it would probably collapse, and the strictest of all Islamic regimes would rule unchallenged. But if Massoud survives, the Taliban will still face a powerful enemy in Afghanistan, as well as a hostile outside world. James Robbins, BBC News.
The German Defence Minister, Rudolf Scharping, has rejected accusations that he misused government aircraft to spend time with his girlfriend. Appearing before a parliamentary committee, Mr. Scharping said he'd strictly adhered to the rules, paying for a number of flights himself when business was combined with pleasure. However, opposition politicians stuck to their call for his resignation, saying his evidence was full of contradictions. Well, for more on the day's roller coaster ride on global share markets, I'm joined live from Washington by Dan Mitchell of the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation. Mr. Mitchell, we have job losses, stocks falling in Europe, only modest gains in Europe, and a 17-year low in Japan. It certainly feels and looks like a recession, doesn't it?
Well, it's definitely a recession if you're one of the 5% of the population that's unemployed in the U.S. or whatever the similar figures are in other countries. And there's no question that the economic growth that we experienced in the late 1990s has come to an end. The question is this just a bump in the road, or does it signify some broader economic slowdown?
Well, I mean, you would say that the markets surely can't lie. They are downturning.
Well, the markets are downturning, but we won't know until we have the benefit of hindsight whether they're going up tomorrow, whether we've reached the end of a correction, or whether this is symptomatic of something broader. All we can do as policymakers in Washington, in Berlin, in London, and elsewhere is focus on policies that will reduce the burden of government so economies across the planet can grow faster.
So how is President Bush going about this?
Well, that's the subject of a lot of debate in Washington right now. The bad news about the Bush tax cut is that all the supply-side elements, the lower rates, the elimination of the death tax, all those provisions are backloaded, meaning they don't really begin to take full effect until 2004, 2006, or even beyond. And so what a lot of people are suggesting is that the president seized this opportunity to reduce the capital gains tax, which unquestionably is a major hindrance to investment by individual entrepreneurs.
But according to an opinion poll, Americans favor cutting the Bush tax cut, don't they?
Well, the American people have been known to be wrong before. I'm simply saying what we at the Heritage Foundation think would be desirable to get the economy moving again.
How would that happen?
Well, if you reduce the capital gains tax by a substantial margin, individual investors will have a greater freedom and ability to put their money where it's going to generate the maximum rate of return for the economy. In other words, when people do well individually, it's because they're doing something that creates wealth in the economy, and that therefore has a spillover effect, creating more jobs, leading to more prosperity. Look, America's had a remarkable 20-year period of prosperity with tens of millions of jobs being created, substantial new wealth for families and businesses. And the question is, should we keep going with the policies of lower tax rates that gave us this remarkable 2 decades of growth?
We'll have to wait and see. Dan Mitchell in Washington, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Alexander Lukashenko, often described as Europe's last dictator, has claimed victory in his campaign for re-election as president of Belarus. Independent observers say the vote was undemocratic. Belarus gained independence 10 years ago after the collapse of the old Soviet Union, and Alexander Lukashenko became president in 1994. His rule has been dogged by allegations of human rights abuses and fraud. And though critics disagree, the president insists his economy is booming.
It was more like a coronation than victory in elections. President Lukashenko wanted a landslide reminiscent of communist times, and he got it. The Electoral Commission pronounced him the winner with more than 3/4 of the vote.
The people of Belarus have chosen their president in strict accordance with the constitution. It's a great achievement. People have shown their wisdom. It's an elegant victory.
Outside on the square, people had different words to describe the result. It's a disgrace, they shouted. Belarus has been an independent state for 10 years now, but some things haven't changed since Soviet days. What the hell are you filming? The woman asks, but she knows the answer. This is a KGB cameraman, one of many on the square. President Lukashenko has a large secret police force to stifle dissent, and they've kept their old Soviet name. So opposition leaders are up against a whole system that exists to keep President Lukashenko in power. Threats, harassment and intimidation. But still they're contesting the election results.
He is lying today like he always does. It's his nature. There have never been such dirty elections in Belarus. Lukashenko used every dishonest trick. It's disgusting.
They may be enjoying a few moments of defiance, but the rest of the country is knuckling down for another 5 years of dictatorship.
The West would like to see the back of President Lukashenko, but he's proving more tenacious than other European dictators. He often behaves as though Belarus was still part of the Soviet Union, and the only capital he takes any notice of is Moscow. Jackie Rowland, BBC News, Minsk.
Scientists in the United States say forests in the northern hemisphere have become denser and greener over the last 20 years, probably as a consequence of global warming. The findings, published in the Journal of Geophysical Research, say the change has been particularly noticeable in Central Europe, Siberia and the Russian Far East. The research also suggests that the growing season has lengthened over the past 20 years. The governing Labour Party in Norway appears to be heading for its worst election result in almost 100 years. Exit polls released shortly after voting ended suggest the party will only win about a quarter of the vote. If projections are confirmed, no party would get the majority needed to form a government on its own. The Israeli and Palestinian leaderships have both indicated there's still no set agreement on a venue or timetable for the resumption of talks. Meanwhile, Israel is reeling from a series of terror attacks on its civilians. They include the first suicide bombing by an Israeli Arab who didn't fit the usual profile, forcing Israel's security services to rethink their strategy.
One more coffin, but a new kind of victim. In Jerusalem today, they buried a young Israeli soldier killed in yesterday's suicide bombing. Daniel Ifrak was 19 and a football fan. He was slaughtered by a fellow citizen. And this is the shock. The soldier being buried here today was not killed by a Palestinian from the West Bank or Gaza. He was killed by an Arab from inside Israel. The country's Arab minority is 1 million strong. The new fear today is the enemy within. An enemy like this man, Mohammed Habeshe, seen here last year being interviewed by Israeli TV. Then he was running for local elections. Yesterday he was leaving this farewell video before setting out to kill. This man with 2 wives and 10 children became Israel's first homegrown suicide bomber. Today his relatives were sitting silently in mourning and in shock, unable to explain his transformation. But many Arabs born and bred in Israel say they are second-class citizens, and the suffering of their Palestinian brothers has given them new reason to hate. The seeds are being sown in classrooms like this. No nursery rhymes for these Arab Israeli children. Instead, this. The heathen Jews must be destroyed, they say. Arab Israeli leaders say this is a minority view, but Israel is worried nonetheless. Orla Gearan, BBC News, Jerusalem.
And the main news this hour. More than 160 people are now known to have been killed during several days of clashes between Muslims and Christians in central Nigeria. This is BBC News.
Hello there. Typhoon Danas has been threatening Japan for several days now. Not too difficult to find the storm system on the satellite imagery. We're homing in here on this swirl of cloud. The storm has actually now made landfall very close to Tokyo, bringing not only heavy rain but some very strong and gusty winds, and it looks as though Honshu is going to get a battering, Hokkaido as well, as that storm moves northwards, eventually heading out into the northern Pacific by Thursday. So it looks as though Tuesday is going to be very wet and windy in Tokyo, but hopefully by Wednesday skies will be clearing, winds will be easing and the sun will be out once again. You can see a mixture of sunshine and showers elsewhere across Asia, and it looks as though we're going to see some rain in the southern hemisphere in Australia. Another little area of low pressure bringing spring rains to southern Australia. Some of that rain's likely to be heavy and thundery. Now on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, some wintry weather for the southern tip of South America. And then as we move northwards, we're likely to see some inclement weather, or at least some wet weather in Santiago, brighter skies in Buenos Aires, and some thunderstorms up across the northern part of the Amazon basin. A lot of thundery activity in the northern Caribbean, and also a lot of showers close to Bermuda. Now the reason for the showers in Bermuda, the remnants of that hurricane that passed by recently, Erin, looks as though it's going to miss the USA. It is heading northwards. Not posing a threat at the moment, but we'll keep you posted on that. And on the other side of the states, it looks as though there'll be plenty of sunshine on the west coast. Of course, fall getting underway in the US and across in Europe. It looks as though autumn started. We've had some chilly nights in France and plenty of unsettled weather showing up on the city forecast there for northern Europe, but you'll still find some sunshine if you head south. Madrid and Athens seeing some sunshine over the next few days with temperatures around 30 degrees. A little bit warmer than that as we head down across the Sahara, but then temperatures fall back to around about 30 degrees where we've got those thundery showers in central parts of Africa, and it looks as though we could see a few showers in the Cape as well.
Next on BBC World, a question of peace.